Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi allazina istafa amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Fatiris samawati wal ard. Anta waliyyi fid dunya wal akhirah. Tawaffani musliman wa alhiqni bis salihin. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. Ramadan al-Mubarak is the month of du'as, and there are several du'as that are mentioned in the Quran al-Kareem and in the Sunnah of Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam. And we should try to study and learn about those du'as which are mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah, and try to use them in this month as much as possible. One of the du'as which is mentioned in Surah Yusuf, which is the dua of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam, is the following dua, which is a very beautiful dua. Fatiris samawati wal ard. Anta waliyyi fid dunya wal akhirah. Tawaffani musliman wa alhiqni bis salihin. That, O Creator of the heavens and the earth, you are my wali, you are my protector in this world and in the hereafter. Tawaffani musliman, that cause me to die as a Muslim. Wa alhiqni bis salihin, and join me with the righteous, with the salihin, with the pious. This is the dua of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam, which is mentioned in Surah Yusuf towards the very end of that story. And the story, in order to understand the dua, it's important to contextualize it and to keep in mind the background. The story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, all of us know, it's a very beautiful story, and there are so many lessons in that. In the Quran al-Kareem, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls that story as Ahsanul Qasas, the best of stories. Now, the way this dua is related with that story, very briefly, we know that when Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was a child, he had to go through a lot of difficulty. His brothers, they threw him inside a well. He was separated from his father, from his parents, from his family. He was thrown inside a well, and he remained in that well. And then after some time, there was a caravan who took him out of that well and sold him as a slave, not even as a servant, but as a slave. And the person who bought him, he brought him to Misr in Egypt. And Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam continued to live this life of slavery. And this is how he grew. He reached adolescence, he reached this age of youth, and eventually he reached the palace of the king of Egypt. And there again he was tested in the form of the wife of Aziz-e-Misr, Zulekha. And that was a very big test, that the first lady herself is coming and presenting herself and saying that commit this sin with me, else I will imprison you. So she herself invited Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam to commit this sin. And when Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam refused, she had him imprisoned. And in fact, Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam himself preferred that I would rather love to be in prison than to commit this sin with you. And then for several years, Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam had to live a life of prison as a prisoner and bear that difficulty, the hardships of the life of a prison. And while in prison, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam with a very special ilm, which was the ilm, the knowledge of interpretation of dreams. And this was also a time when the king, he had a particular dream, and no one was able to interpret that dream. But one of the prisoners said that Hazrat Yusuf al-Islam has this ilm. So the king, he called Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam, and Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam interpreted that dream for the king, and the king loved that interpretation. And as a result, he not only freed Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam, but also brought him close to himself and made him the wazir, made him his assistant. And then later on, the king, he made Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam the minister, the finance minister, and handed over all the treasures of the country in the hands of Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam. Meanwhile, on the other side, Allah Ta'ala mentions that when Hazrat Yusuf al-Islam was separated from his father, Hazrat Yaqub al-Islam, so Hazrat Yaqub al-Islam, he was extremely sad on this loss. And he cried so much that he lost his eyesight. He became blind. And eventually, at the end of this surah, we see that there is a reunion. There was a reunion where the brothers, they come to Egypt, and eventually Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam discloses himself, he reveals himself that I am your brother. And he forgives his brothers, and he says to them to bring your father back, bring my father. And eventually he calls his brothers that they should come live with him. He calls his parents, his father, Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam, to come live with him. And towards the end, that dream which Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam saw, where Ra'aytu ahada ashara kawkaba, that 11 stars and the sun and the moon, they're prostrating, they're doing sajda. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfilled that dream. And towards the end, we see that the brothers, they bowed themselves, and that dream became true. Allah Ta'ala gave izzat. Allah Ta'ala gave honor. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam for this incredible rank. And this was the kubuli and the acceptance of Hazrat Yusuf al-Islam, and that he was able to meet his father, he met his mother, he met his brothers. And now comes this dua. But one verse before this, Hazrat Yusuf al-Islam, when he meets his parents, when he meets his father, that father which he had, the father Hazrat Yaqub al-Islam had lost his eyesight, crying for his son. He's meeting his mother, he's meeting his brothers who had done so much of zulm upon him when he was young. who had wronged him. So when he meets his family, now what does Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam say to his father? This is really instructive for all of us. Again, we should try to put yourself in that zone. Imagine if it was any one of us and we were to meet our parents after this whole long test and trial. Then a normal person, they would mention everything to his father. That, oh, my father, I was thrown inside the well and I was made a slave. And then I was put inside the prison for so many years. And the prison life was like this. It was very difficult, etc., etc. You would tell all your story. You would tell all the pains that you had to go through, all the sufferings that you had to endure. You will tell about all the grief and the sorrow and the difficulty and the calamity that you had to undergo for all of these years. You would tell all of that to your parents. But instead, what we see here is that when Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, he meets his father, he meets his mother. So what does he say? He says that وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي is akhrajani min as-sijni, that my Rabb was certainly good to me when he took me out of the prison. So Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam did not mention about the fact that he went inside the prison, but rather he's mentioning that my Rabb did good to me when he took me out of the prison. So there is no mention of going in the prison, but rather there is an acknowledgement. There is an element of gratitude and appreciation that Allah Ta'ala took me out of the prison. That moment is being remembered. That moment is being mentioned, that when he was taken out of the prison by Allah Ta'ala. The next, وَجَاءَ بِكُم مِّنَ الْبَدْوِ, and, oh my father, he brought you here from a Bedouin life. He brought you, my parents, and he brought my brothers. He brought you here in this life, this Egypt, which is a life of city, this palace life. He brought you here from a life that you were living, which was a Bedouin life. So again, we see this element of gratitude, that Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, he did not mention that I was in the jail, that I went in the jail, rather mentioning that I came out of the jail, I came out of the prison. Similarly, he did not mention that I was separated from you for so many years, that you were living in the Bedouin and I was separated away from you. You were living in the village, I was away from you. He did not mention any of that. He just mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought you here from a life that you were living and now you're with me. Allah ta'ala brought you out from that Bedouin life. And then that whole episode about the brothers, that they threw Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam inside that well, and the kind of oppression and the zulm and the wrong that they did. Again, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam did not mention any of that, and rather simply mentioned that min ba'di an nazagha shaytanu bayni wa bayna ikhwati, that Allah Ta'ala brought you here from that Bedouin life after shaitan had induced this tussle between me and my brothers. So Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, he put all the blame on shaitan. That whole episode about the brothers, shaitan was responsible. That after shaitan, he caused this rift between me and my brothers. Shaitan created this fasad between me and my brothers. So, 3 things are mentioned, and all 3 of them are the ihsanat and the favors and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no mention of the pain and the suffering. There is no mention of going inside the prison, but there is a mention of coming out of the prison. There is no mention of being separated from his parents, but there is mention that how Allah brought his parents back and united parents with him. There is no mention about the wrongs and the evil and the zulm that was done by the brothers. But there is mention about shaitan, that shaitan caused this rift between me and my brothers. This is a lesson for us. Now, when Allah Ta'ala says that this story is ahsanul qasas, one of the most beautiful stories, it's not simply a story. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us life lessons, important lessons, that even we see here that Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, he underwent so much test and trial, so much difficulty, hardship. The hardship of well, the hardship of a prison, the hardship of being separated from his family, the hardship of being sold as a slave, living a life of a slave. But when he meets his parents, he is not mentioning any of that pain, that suffering, that hardship. Instead, what he is mentioning is the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is mentioning the in'amat, the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what you call being grateful to Allah ta'ala. That we are always supposed to be grateful. This is how we are supposed to be. This is the lesson. This is how we are supposed to be. That in this world there will be tests. This life is not Jannat. This life is dunya. And in dunya, Allah Ta'ala has placed her here in this dunya to test us. Every one of us will be tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are three worlds. That place where there will be no test and we'll have joy and bliss, everlasting joy, bliss, happiness, where there will not be even any name of pain and suffering. That place is called Jannat. And then there is another place where there will only be pain and suffering and nothing else. And the name of that place is Jahannam. And the third place is going to be a mixture of both, where you will have happiness but also sadness, joy but also grief, health but also sickness, honor but also disgrace. And that place is called dunya. In this dunya is not Jannat. This dunya is not a place where one would expect that nothing wrong can happen to me, nothing bad can happen to me, no difficulty will happen in my life, no calamity will come upon me. This dunya is not Jannat. This dunya is a place of test where every single person will be tested. In Quran, Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. That we will definitely, surely test each and every one of you. Each and every one of you. With hunger, with loss of your loved ones, with the loss of your property, with health, with sickness. We will test each and every one of you with the fear of poverty. And وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, glad tidings are for those who are patient. Even the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam are tested by Allah Ta'ala. The most beloved servants of Allah and the most beloved of beloved, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam was also tested. In fact, those who are beloved to Allah, they are tested the most by Allah Ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was tested the most. So this dunya is a place of test where each one of us are either getting papers where we're supposed to do sabr or we're getting questions where we're supposed to do shukr. It's a practical examination. You have a written exam, you have an oral exam, but sometimes there's also something called a practical exam where the questions, you have to respond in terms of your actions. Allah Ta'ala will send sometimes circumstances of joy in your life, when everything is happening according to your plan. There is happiness. And that is a test Allah Ta'ala wishes to see whether a person will be grateful or not. And then there will be other occasions in your life when there will be difficulty, hardship, calamities, tests, trials, tribulations, tragedies. That's also a test from Allah Ta'ala. And Allah Ta'ala wishes to see whether we have the right answer or not, whether we have sabr, whether we endure that patiently or not. So, sabr and shukr, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to see from us. This is what life is. This is what life is, and this is what the reality of dunya is. So when Allah Ta'ala blesses us with His favors, normally what happens is that people, they become heedless. When everything is going right, when you have food to eat, you have a roof under which you have shelter, you have your joys of life, you are content, you have a life of comfort, luxury, all the blessings, you're enjoying all of that, then normally a person, they become heedless of Allah Ta'ala. They become lazy in the relationship with Allah Ta'ala. So this is the lesson that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us, that when you have ni'mate, when you are blessed with the blessings of Allah Ta'ala, don't be heedless. Rather, appreciate Allah Ta'ala for that. Be thankful, be grateful to Allah Ta'ala. And on the other hand, when you're going through some difficulty, there is some pain, suffering, then have sabr. Innama yuwaffas sabiruna ajrahum bighayri hisab. In Quran, Allah Ta'ala says that those who do sabr, then Allah Ta'ala will give them a reward which is beyond measure. Beyond measure. So here there is a tremendous lesson that we are learning from this story. That Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he's mentioning the whole story. And the summary of that story, at the conclusion of that story, the conclusion of his whole life, right? That this life where he went so many tests and trials, so much difficulty, so much hardship, but the conclusion that he is extracting from his life is that my Rabb, my Lord, has done incredible favors upon me. Allahu Akbar Kabira. Such a beautiful conclusion. That my Allah Ta'ala, my Rabb, He has done big favors upon me. He has done good to me. Waqad ahsana bi. He has done ahsan. He has done goodness towards me. When He took me out, when Allah Ta'ala, He took me out of the prison. He took me out of the prison. He brought my family here. He united me with my family. And Shaitan, my brother, Shaitan was responsible for that rift between me and my brothers. So mentioning the ihsanat and the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then after mentioning these favors and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, he makes this following dua. This dua that Fatiras samawati wal ard. Fatiras samawati wal ard. Creator of the heavens and the earth. Anta waliyyi fi dunya wal akhirah. Tawaffani musliman wa alhiqni bis salihin. So when we look at this dua, every phrase is so beautiful. First thing, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam begins this dua is by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the adab and the etiquette of making dua that we learn in the sunnah, that one should not immediately or directly ask Allah ta'ala for something. Rather begin dua by hamd, by sana, by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one can praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in different ways. This is also a method of praising Allah ta'ala, that we mention this quality, this sifat, this attribute of Allah ta'ala, that Fatiras samawati wal ard, that Allah ta'ala is the creator of the heavens and the earth. And this has a very special significance in the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, because Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was shown all the stages of life, was shown all the ups and downs of life. He saw the sorrow of life, the sorrows in his life. He experienced the sorrows in his life. He experienced the pains. He experienced the suffering. He also experienced the happiness and the joy and the contentment. Sometimes he's experiencing a life of slavery, sold as a slave, living as a slave. And on other occasions, he is living a life of a king, as a minister with all the treasures in his hand. At one point, he is living a life of a prisoner locked behind bars. At another time, he's living a life of a minister with all the treasures in his hand. So he saw all of these ups and downs of life. So having seen all of that, he calls upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and says that, oh, the creator of the heavens and the earth, that all of this ups and downs in lives, this is happening due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the being who's controlling the heavens, who's controlling the earth, who's controlling the events of the heavens and the earth, whether those are good events or bad events. They're ups or downs in a person's life. They're joy or sorrow. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is controlling everything. He's controlling all the events. He is the creator of all of these events. He is the creator of everything. Fatiras samawati wal ard. The next thing, Anta waliyyi fi dunya wal akhirah. That Allah, Anta, now this is very personal. That Allah, you, Anta, you are waliyyi. You are my protector. You see, Anta, Allah, you, waliyyi. Allah, you are my protector. Wali. Wali means protector. Wali means your guardian, your caretaker. This word Allah Ta'ala uses in the Quran elsewhere as well, means that being who's responsible for taking care of you, for protecting you. He is responsible for your profit and for your loss. For example, a father is a wali of his child. That if the child needs anything, the father fulfills the need. Once there were two kids, one of them went for Umrah, and the other kid asked him that, how did you go for Umrah? That, do you know which hotel you would be staying in Makkah Mukarramah? And the child said, I don't know. Acha, do you know which hotel you would be staying in Madinah Tayyibah? And he said, I don't know. Acha, how many days will you be in Makkah Mukarramah? I don't know. Acha, how will you go from Makkah Mukarramah to Madinah Tayyibah? I don't know. Acha, which flight will you take to go? I don't know. When he said, I don't know to all the questions, so the other person said that, then how are you going? And he replied and said that I'm going with my father. And then one sentence, he gave the answer to all the questions above. That my father is my wali, he is my caretaker, my guardian, he will take care of all my needs. In the presence of my father, I don't need to worry about anything else. Anta waliyi. Allah, you are my wali. When we used to, when we were young, we used to play cricket, and we would see that sometimes boys are playing cricket and one of them would hit the ball, and the neighbor, there is a glass window, and the ball smashed into the glass window and the glass is all broken. Now, when the neighbor will come out, he will not go to the child and say, give me money. He will go to the father of the child. He will go to the father and say that your son broke my window pane. I want compensation. Why? Because father is the wali. In the presence of the father, the child doesn't need to worry about anything. The father will take care. So just like a father is a wali of his child, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the wali of the righteous servants. وَهُوَ يَتَوَلَّى الصَّالِحِينَ. Allah Ta'ala is the mutawalli, He is the guardian, the protector of the pious, of the righteous. So Sayyidina Yusuf al-Islam, in his dua, this is also a way to praise Allah Ta'ala. That, Ya Allah, you are my wali. Anta waliyi. And you are my wali, you are my protector, you are my guardian, you are my caretaker. Fit dunya, in this world, all the needs that I have in this world, Allah, you are the one who will fulfill all my needs. Allah, I only know your door. I only bow before your door. I only ask from you and you alone. In the dunya, you have beggars, and the beggars, they can go to one door. And if they don't get something, they go to a second door. And if they don't get from the second door, they can go to a third door. But for a believer, a person says that, Ya Allah, I'm at your doorstep. I have no other door to go to except for your door. Ya Allah, I ask you that you give me through your door. That, Ya Allah, the Prophet ﷺ, he showed us your door and said to us that this is, whenever you need anything, this is the door where you should come. The Anbiya, the prophets, used to ask from this door, your door. The Sahaba Ikram used to ask from this door. All the awliya, they used to ask from this door. Allah, I'm also here at your door. Allah, please open this door for me as well. Anta waliyi. Allah, you are my protector. I have no one else other than you. No other door to go to other than you. And this is what Allah Ta'ala loves. This is the adab of making dua. Showing our relationship with Allah Ta'ala. That, Ya Allah, I have no other door to go to except for you. Even if you reject me, even if my duas are not fulfilled, even if I return empty-handed, Ya Allah, your door is the only door that I know of. There is no other place where I can get, where I can fulfill my needs. Who can fulfill my needs? There is no other one. Allah, you are the one. Anta waliyi. Anta waliyi. You are the one. In the books, it's mentioned that there was one old man who went for Hajj. And you had a habit of going for Hajj every year. One year he went with one of his attendants. He was old, he needed some help. So when they reached the plains of Arafah, Yawm Arafah, the day of Arafah. So this man, elderly man, he's making dua. And he's making dua. In his duas, he's saying that, oh Allah, accept my Hajj, labbaik. And there is a voice that comes from above which says, la labbaik. That we haven't accepted your labbaik. La labbaik, la labbaik. So the attendant, when he heard that voice, he was surprised. He turned and said that, where is this coming from? And why are you continuing to make dua if you're hearing this voice? La labbaik means that this is not accepted. So then the old man, he said that, don't worry about this. For the last 40 years of my life, I've been performing Hajj. And whenever I reach this place on the day of Arafah, and I make this dua, I hear this voice which says, La labbaik, that we haven't accepted. We have not accepted. But you tell me that, is there any other door to go to other than this door of Allah Ta'ala? There is no other door for me. Whether I hear labbaik or la labbaik, it doesn't matter, because this is the only door that I have. I'm here at the doorstep of my Lord, and I'm here asking Allah Ta'ala for acceptance. I have no other door to go to. And those words, he said that with so much humility, with so much emotion, with so much sincerity. Then the voice came from above and said that, labbaik, we've accepted all your previous Hajj. This is what anta waliyi means. That, Ya Allah, I have no place to look, no place to go to, no sanctuary other than you, no refuge other than you. Who can I, if I have grief in my heart, if I have things to share in my heart, I have no one to share my heart with other than you. If there are things that I want to share, Allah, you are the only one. Sometimes people have sadness in their heart, grief in their heart, sorrow, and there is no one to share their grief with. Anta waliyi, Allah, you are the one with whom I can share my grief. You are the one with whom I can share my pain. You are the one where I can tell you what my problems are. I can tell you what my troubles are. Allah, I want to open my heart to you. I want to spill my heart to you. Whatever is in my heart, Allah, I want to present that to you. Anta waliyi, you are my wali. Fit dunya, in this dunya, wal akhirah. And Allah, you are also my wali in akhirah. You will fulfill, Allah, you are the one who can fulfill my needs in akhirah. You are the one who can set my affairs right. My affairs are all messed up. Allah, you are the ones who can remove this mess. You can sort out this mess for me. All my affairs are scattered. Allah, you are the one who can bring all my affairs together. You are the one who can untangle my affairs for me. You are the one who can sort out my life. Anta waliki. Anta waliki. Fit dunya wal akhirah. And then, after praising Allah Ta'ala, this is all praise. This is all hamd of Allah. Fatiras samawati wal ard. Anta waliyyi fit dunya wal akhirah. Then comes the dua. Then comes the request. Then comes the application. What is the dua? Tawaffani muslima. Tawaffani muslima. That Allah, you have done so many favors upon me. That you took me out from the well. You took me out from the prison. You gave me a life of comfort. You made me the minister, the king, put all the treasures in my hand. I'm living in a palace life. You united my brothers and my parents to me. I'm with my family. Allah, you have favored me with all of these blessings. Now, Ya Allah, this one last favor. Allah, I want one more wish. Allah, I have this one more desire. Allah, one more gift from you. Allah, I want one more gift from you, one more favor from you, one more blessing from you, which is that when the time comes for me to leave this world, Allah, enable me to die in a state of Iman. Enable me to die in a state of Islam. Tawaffani Muslima. Enable me to die in a state where I am submissive to you. Muslim comes from Islam, submission. Enable me to die in a state where, Allah, you are pleased with me and I'm pleased with you. That you are smiling at me and I'm smiling back at you. You say if the ending is good, then the life was good. All is well, that ends well. So Allah, enable me to have husne khatima, to have a good ending. Because a person, they don't know what their ending would be. We know what happened to Shaitan. He had so many years of ibadah, had done sajda on every place where you could do sajda. And we know what was his ending. Rajim, rejected, thrown out. Bal'am Ba'ur, his story is also mentioned. He did ibadah for 400 years. And then Allah Ta'ala, his ending, his ibadah was not accepted. And Allah Ta'ala coins his example in the Quran. That his example is like a dog. Allahu Akbar. 400 years of ibadah, spurned, thrown, and he dies in that state. So this is a fikr, a concern that a person should always have. No matter how much piety, how much righteousness, how many acts of worship we have done, no matter how many blessings we are enjoying and how many favors Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done upon us, this ending, having a good ending, is a wish that every person should have in their heart. It's a desire that every person should have, that Allah enable me to die a good death. And a good death, and a death on Iman, a death on Islam, Sometimes people, they die very tragic deaths. Tragic. Just a few days ago, at the university where I teach, we learned about a student who took his own life. People die in very tragic ways. Asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a good ending, because we don't know when the hearts can fluctuate. Our hearts, they are always fluctuating. Qalb comes from qalab. Qalab means fluctuating. A human heart is like that. There'll be fluctuations, ups, downs, slips, surges. In Hadith Mubarakah, it comes that the heart always is fluctuating. And that's why we should make dua to Allah Ta'ala. That Allah, Rabbana la tuzi' qulubana. Allah, do not put any crookedness in my heart. Do not flip my heart away from Iman. Do not flip my heart away from you. Allah, when the time comes for me to leave this world, enable me to live in a state that you are pleased with me. I am pleased with you. That you are razi with me. I am razi with you. Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'inna. That when the time comes for me to leave this world, the caller calls out my soul like that. That, oh peaceful soul, oh contented soul, Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'inna, irji'i ila rabbik. Return back to your Lord. Radhiyatam mardiya. In a state that you are pleased with Allah Ta'ala, Allah Ta'ala is pleased with you. Fadkhuli fi ibadi. Enter into the servants, into my servants, into my ibad. Wadkhuli jannati. And enter into my garden, enter into my Jannah. This is a beautiful ending. So this is something we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. Last Ramadan, I believe, gave a whole lecture on different ways in which we can achieve a good ending. We can have a good ending. For example, using miswak and replying to the azan, and controlling our gaze. So these are ways in which we can have a good ending. Tawaffani muslima wa alhiqni bis salihin. And the last part is also very important. Wa alhiqni bis salihin. Allah, join me, connect me, unite me with the pious, with the salihin, with the righteous. Who is making this dua? A Nabi is making a dua. That join me with the righteous. A Nabi, their maqam is much higher than the salihin. This is a dua of humility. And this is another lesson for us. That Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, being a Nabi of Allah Ta'ala, Nabiyeen are first. Nabiyeen was shuhada. Nabiyeen was siddiqeen was shuhada was salihin. Oh, salihin comes much later. Nabiyeen, then you have siddiqeen, then you have shuhada, then finally comes the rank of salihin. And here Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, a Nabi of Allah Ta'ala, is making dua of humility, dua of ajizi, of inkisari, of humbleness. That Allah, join me with the pious. Join me with the righteous. Join me with them. This was the tawazu, the humility of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. And this is also teaching us another important lesson, that to be united with the salihin is such an incredible blessing that a Nabi of the caliber of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam is making dua for this. And we should then think that if a Nabi is making dua and needs this for himself, then why wouldn't me and you need this? If a Nabi requires the sohbat of salihin and wants to be united with the salihin, then shouldn't we also requires sohbat-e-salihin? Shouldn't we also try to unite ourselves with the salihin? Shouldn't we also try to put ourselves in the presence, in the company of the salihin? Incredible lesson that this is such a tremendous neemat to be with the salihin. That a Nabi of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam's caliber is asking for this neemat. That Allah join me with the salihin. Join me with the salihin. And this is the month of Ramadan, and there are several things in Ramadan, but one way to look at a Ramadan is that this is the month of taqwa. And then Allah Ta'ala has linked taqwa with this sohbat-e-salihin. In one ayat, Allah Ta'ala says that, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, all those who have iman, ittaqullah, have taqwa. Fear Allah Ta'ala as He deserves to be feared. Know Allah Ta'ala as He deserves to be known. Love Allah Ta'ala as He deserves to be loved. And wakunu ma'as sadiqin. And the way to do that Allah Ta'ala has mentioned in the Quran, is that you join your being with the righteous. Join your being with the pious. This is the way to get taqwa. This is the dua of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. It means that we should put our hearts in the presence of those people who are truer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam than we are. Kunu ma'as sadiqin. That we should ask ourselves that, am I a true mu'min? Sidq means sadiq means true. It's a perfect word. That we ask ourselves that, am I true mu'min? Am I true to Allah? Am I true to my Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Am I true to my iman? Am I true to myself? And then many of us will find that the answer to one or some or all of those questions will be no. I'm untrue mu'min. I'm a false mu'min. I'm untrue to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm certainly not true to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I've not been true to my iman. I've not been true to myself. So how can I become true? To put myself in the company of those who are truer than myself. Easy way to get this. وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. Simply sit with the people who are truer than you. And again, look at the dua, وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ. Allah, unite me. Allah, unite me. In the Quran, Allah says, وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. Be with them. Be with the Sadiqin. Be with the righteous. Allah Ta'ala could have said that obey the Sadiqin or follow the Sadiqin. No, just said simply, Kunu, join your being with their being. Put yourself in their presence, and that will be enough. And why is that enough? Because Sahaba, they're known as Sahaba. Why? Because Sahaba, they are people who got the sohba, the presence, the company. They're the companions. The person who gets the company of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Obviously, the Sahaba were many other. They were people of ittiba. They were people who obeyed, the people who followed, the people who did hijrah, the people who did jihad. Many other names could have been used in theory. But their distinguishing feature was their suhba, their company. They spend time in the company of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They put their hearts in the company of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is how the Sahaba, they became Sahaba. They put themselves in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If they were Tabi'een, they put themselves in the presence of some Sahaba. If Tabai Tabi'een, they put themselves in the presence of some Tabi'een. So this is called Sohbat, and this has continued in an unbroken chain of practice in this ummah till this day. Sohbat did not end with the Sahaba, Sohbat began with the Sahaba. And just like the Sahaba reached the highest level of taqwa due to their sohbah with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just like the Tabi'een reached their taqwa due to their sohbah with whichever Sahabi they kept company with, right? in this day and age, we can also increase in our taqwa by putting ourselves in the suhbah of someone. So this is one of those things which one should ask for. That the al-hikni bis-salihin. They say this in that you get milk from the seller of milk. You get vegetables from the seller of vegetables. And you get Allah Ta'ala from Allah Wale. Allah Ta'ala Allah Walon se milta hai. It's that simple. You get Allah Ta'ala from the people of Allah. That's how you get this relationship with Allah Ta'ala. By sitting in the company of the people who have this relationship with Allah. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ taught us, that this is how we should make our dua. Allahumma inni as'aluka hubbaka wa hubba man yuhibbuk. That, oh Allah, increase me in my love for you and increase me in my love for those who love you. Number one is direct, that Allah, I want you to increase my heart in love for you. And second is that maybe I won't be able to get that on my own. Maybe my heart is not pure enough for such a blessing. Maybe I need to ride on the waves of someone. So the second part of this dua, that make me love those who love you. This is how it works. That maybe you will accept my love for them that I have for your sake. I'll end with one hadith, that there were a group of Sahaba who were sitting with the Prophet ﷺ. And the Sahaba Ikram, they were thinking people. And they were thinking, there's one teaching that they knew, that Jannat has different levels. Even saying one Subhanallah will bring you a notch up in those levels. So when the Sahaba realized that if Jannat has levels and the people will be according to their stature in Jannat, then the Prophet ﷺ will be in a level all of his own, because nobody can reach that level of the Prophet ﷺ. So some Sahaba, they were discussing and they were worried. They said that in this dunya we have the company of the Prophet ﷺ. So what kind of Jannat is there where the Prophet ﷺ will be at another level and we'll be not there? We won't be there. So then they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they asked this question. And then Prophet ﷺ said one of the most famous ahadiths. And the Sahaba, they say that when the Prophet ﷺ told this hadith, this was one of the happiest day of our life after bringing Iman. And what did the Prophet ﷺ say to them? Al-mar'u ma'a man ahabba. That a person will be with whom they love. That's the power of love. That love leads to togetherness. Love leads to companionship. That person who has the love for the righteous will be with the righteous in Jannah. That person who has love for the Prophet ﷺ will be together with him in Jannatul Firdaus for all of eternity. So this is Quran. This is the hadith, that you get this companionship. And this shows you the benefit of this tradition of putting yourself in the company of those who are better than us. Right? How many of us can say that we have the real love for the Prophet ﷺ in our heart? Very few of us can claim that. Many of us, we don't have the true muhabba or love for the Prophet ﷺ. But al-mar'u ma'a man ahabba, this is continuous. So if I love someone, I get to be with them. They love someone, they are with them, and I get to be with them. They love someone, going all the way back to the Sahaba. So if I love someone who loves someone who loves someone who was a tabi, who loved Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala an, and Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala an, he loved the Prophet sallallahu. This is called a silsila. This is called a chain of love. And any link in that chain when it's attached to the chain, it's going to go to the same place as the first link. Or you could think like a train, right? If there is a train, there is an engine. The engine is the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You have the first class compartment, which is the Sahaba. The next cabin, Tabi'een, Tabai Tabi'een, you keep going, right? And anyone who attaches to the train, wherever the engine is going, that's where they're going. So if you're like, cargo class or bathroom, right? Seat number 1A, that's our level. But if you're attached to that train, we will go wherever the engine is going. So this is the dua, that وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ, that Allah join me with the people of piety. Join me with the people of your love. Join me with the people who are truer than me, who are truer to you in the relationship. And this is the dua on which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends the surah. This Ahsanul Qasas. It ends on this surah. Allah Ta'ala mentions the whole story and in such detail. This is the most detailed story which is mentioned in the whole of Quran. There is no other story which is mentioned to this extent than the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. And how is this story ending? It is ending on this dua. And what is this dua ending on? Tawaffani minas salih. Tawaffani muslima wa alhiqni minas salih. And then after this, Allah Ta'ala ends the surah as well. So we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable all of us, that we can, may Allah Ta'ala give all of us the tawfiq, that we can learn this dua, make this dua, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us Tawaffani Muslima, life of Iman, a death of Iman, a death on Iman. May Allah Ta'ala raise us up in a state of Iman, in a state that we are pleasing to Him and He's pleasing to us. That Allah Ta'ala is pleased with us, Allah Ta'ala is razi with us, Allah Ta'ala is smiling upon us. And may Allah Ta'ala also give us the tawfiq that we can وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ, that we can unite ourselves with the Salihin. If we can unite ourselves with the Salihin in this world, then inshallah Allah Ta'ala will unite us with the Salihin in the next world as well, in Akhirah, and that will be in Jannah. We'll get to be with them in Jannat. So may Allah Ta'ala give all of us the tawfiq to become people of muhabba, to become people of suhba, to increase in our suhba and muhabba in this month of Ramadan, and may Allah Ta'ala bring us more and more taqwa in this month of Ramadan. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله تعالى على حبيبه خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.